If you're looking to wildcard in FPL Game Week 30 or FPL Game Week 31, or you're just looking at general transfer plans to bring in players to target and teams to target, then this is the video for you. And there's a team in this video that nobody's even putting in their wildcard teams, and I do not understand why, because they've got a very high likelihood of doubling in Game Week 33, and as well as that, they've got an unbelievable fixture in Game Week 32. So this is a team that we actually need to be targeting, and as I say, nobody is even talking about this right now. If you're an FPL fan and you're not subscribed to this channel, what are you doing? We do daily FPL content, so hit subscribe on this channel. It takes 1 second, and drop a like as well while you're down there. So let's start off with the first double game week that's absolutely confirmed and concrete. That is Newcastle and Crystal Palace. They, of course, double in Game Week 32. The big double is expected to be in Game Week 33, and then the blank game week in 34. But as I say, this double game week in 32 is something that we need to be considering. We need to be bringing in players from Newcastle and Crystal Palace to make sure we are 100% prepared for that. Newcastle double game week coming against Manchester United and Crystal Palace, which is a pretty decent double there, back-to-back home fixtures. I'd say that's a very nice double for the Newcastle assets. And then you have Crystal Palace, who are doubling in a little bit of a tougher game, I'd have to say, against Manchester City away and Newcastle away. 2 away games, but at the end of the day, it's 2 fixtures. And Crystal Palace have been in very good form of recent as well. So something that we definitely need to take into consideration. There's a lot of good Palace assets which do look really good in FPL. So as I say, it's not a great double, but as I say, it's better than a single game week. And the other thing we need to consider is the FA Cup results. Now this will obviously determine a lot that goes into our wildcard team. We'll know the FA Cup results before the end of Game Week 30, so we'll actually be able to pick our team based on that if you are wildcarding in Game Week 30. If you're wildcarding in Game Week 31, there's more benefits to that due to the fact that we'll actually have these fixtures like properly locked in. The fixtures won't be confirmed until Game Week 31, but we expect it to be double Game Week 33. But as I say, after Game Week 30, before the Game Week 30 deadline, we will know who is actually going to be double game week in the future, and who's going to be then blanking as well. You've got Fulham versus Crystal Palace, Brighton versus Nottingham Forest, Preston versus Aston Villa, and then Bournemouth versus Man City. Now, with Man City and Aston Villa, they're very likely to double game week in 33 due to the fact that they are both playing each other in blank game week 34. So that means it would only take either Aston Villa or Manchester City to win in their FA Cup game, which Aston Villa are playing Preston. You would expect them to beat them, and Man City would be the favourites for that game against Bournemouth. So a double game week in 33 for Aston Villa and Man City is extremely likely. So we want to be looking at those assets as well, as those are pretty nailed on doubles, you'd say, right now, along with some others. So we'll just start off by looking at the Crystal Palace assets. Now, Crystal Palace assets are very interesting, as I say, because they have got that double game week locked in, as I discussed before, against Man City and Newcastle. They could also double in game week 33, as well as they're still in the FA Cup. They have to beat Fulham then to double. So we could potentially get back-to-back Crystal Palace doubles. And as well as that, you can see in the next fixture, they are playing against Southampton away, which is pretty much one of the best fixtures you can get. Now, as you can see, we've got Dean Henderson and Munoz on screen. We'll just discuss the defenders first, the defensive options for Crystal Palace. Now, it depends on what kind of way you want to go about it. You can go for maybe 2 attackers or a midfielder and an attacker from Palace, or you could go for a double up on the defence. So you could go for Munoz and then Henderson. I'd say Munoz we don't really need to discuss. He's pretty much a complete lock-in at this point. He could potentially get his minutes managed. He is on international duty with Colombia, so it's something to be aware of. Although Gladstone said he will have to manage minutes, but I do expect Munoz to be starting that game against Southampton, and once he's kind of got through that, he's got that Brighton game which you have to hope, and then he has got a week off after that. So I do expect Munoz's minutes to be absolutely fine, but as I say, he could potentially maybe get rested in the FA Cup, or maybe get substituted early in one of them games, who knows? Or he could even get substituted against Southampton if the game is locked up, who knows? But as I say, I still think Munoz is just the number 1 Crystal Palace option going forward, in my personal opinion. In terms of everybody's owning him as well, it's going to be very risky to go without him. As for Dean Henderson, now, as I say, if you wanted to go for a double up on Palace backline, I do think it's probably best to go for Henderson with Munoz. And as I say, Henderson's done very well over the course of the season. Palace have been very good defensively. The defensive numbers have been very good. They've kept a lot of clean sheets recently. And as well as that, he is the 3rd highest scoring keeper over the course of the season so far as well. So Dean Henderson is good value as well, very cheap. So I think Henderson's probably the next best option defensively. Obviously, of course, then to Munoz. I wanted to discuss the midfielders for Crystal Palace as well. Of course, you've got Eze and you've got Ismail Sarr. And a lot of people thinking, who would I choose out of Eze and Sarr? Now, for me, it's a pretty straightforward one. Sarr is a whole million cheaper than Eze. And if you look at Sarr's recent form, it's a lot better than Eze's of recent. Now, I mean, and over the course of the season as well, Sarr has got more points and more points per game than Eberici Eze. Now, Eze could do very well in this run of fixtures. I'm not denying that. But also as well, Sarr does play so high and it gets in such good positions as well. The positions that Eze doesn't seem to find himself in as much, as Eze is kind of more of a creative for Crystal Palace. Sarr's, they're quite reliant on him for goals and assists as well. So Sarr is definitely, for me, the better option with him being that £1 million cheaper. And as I say, that fixture against Southampton is such a nice fixture for Crystal Palace going forward as far as offensively, and as well as that Brighton is not too bad as well. And Crystal Palace, as I say, have been very good in recent weeks, and going forward they've been good. Defensively they've been good. So if you wanted to go for Ismail Sarr in the midfield, that's very valid as well. And also Mateta as well. I do think Mateta is just pretty much a lock-in if he's going to be fit for that game, which we're not 100% sure on yet. So this is what Mateta's had to say about his injury. He actually spoke out. Now Mateta, we do have that FA Cup game before, so it's going to be interesting to see if he's in that squad there. If we know he's in the squad there, then he'll be absolutely fine. But if he's not in the squad, then it is definitely cause for concern. So far, the update with Mateta is that he said they were in Marbella last week and he trained, but he was training not with the squad. And he said when pushed for an answer on his return date, he said, I don't know, and he's still in touch with the doctor. He said he's always speaking with the doctor pretty much daily. He said, hopefully I can play in the FA Cup versus Fulham. Hopefully they can see me, and I'm in the training ground every day. He said, I need to wear a mask, I need to wear something. I will take the one that's best comfortable. So it sounds like he wants to obviously play, and he feels like he's fine to play, but it's more the doctor and if he's advised to play or not, which is something that we'll be able to find out in the FA Cup game. So right now we can't really discuss Mateta too much. If he's 100% fit for me, I would be putting him in a wildcard team, and he's definitely a very good transfer in. But as I say, we just don't know any concrete information yet. Now, I want to discuss Newcastle assets as well, as they double in game week 32. It's going to be another team that we are going to be targeting quite heavily because they have that guaranteed double game week. They do not double in game week 33, but they also don't then blank in 34, where they do have Ipswich. So if you have your free hit chip, I do just think 34 is just ideal. Do you use that free hit chip? A lot of people are talking about Newcastle options defensively. There's Dan Burn, there's Livramento in terms of the defenders. For me, I just think Dan Burn's a standout. He's played 90 minutes pretty much every single time he's played this season. Livramento's had games where he's been substituted early, and you just don't want that kind of that headache of having Livramento and then thinking, will he get subbed off early or not? Obviously, Lewis Hall's got injured recently, which kind of boosts Livramento's chances as he can play right and left back. But I do just think Dan Burn's pretty much the nailed-on one. So for me, it's quite a straightforward decision. If you're thinking between Livramento and Dan Burn, for me, it's just quite clearly Dan Burn. As for midfielders, a lot of people are talking about Anthony Gordon. A lot of people are talking about Jacob Murphy. If people are on a wildcard in game week 30, I've seen quite a few people going for Jacob Murphy due to the fact that he isn't suspended. Anthony Gordon is actually suspended until game week 31, where he does play against Leicester, which is a great fixture. So on wildcard 31, for me, it's no debate. I think Anthony Gordon will be going straight into my team on wildcard 31. Jacob Murphy, he's decent, but as I say, Anthony Gordon's just the better, superior option. He is like a whole 2 million more, so you expect that. If you're on a wildcard 30 and you want to go for Jacob Murphy and you feel like you have to start him, then I'd say go for Jacob Murphy. But realistically, you can probably wildcard in 30 and put Gordon on your bench in game week 30 and then just have him for 31. That's what I prefer to do personally. So if it was discussion between Jacob Murphy and Anthony Gordon, I will be choosing Anthony Gordon all day long. And the other two assets that I want to discuss for Newcastle is Nick Pope and Alexander Isak. Of course, Alexander Isak, I don't need to discuss much. He's going to be our captain in game week 32 pretty much no matter what. And he's going to be most people's captain realistically. He's got the best fixture in terms of the double game week. Better than, for example, a Mateta and Crystal Palace. Alexander Isak is also unbelievable as well. So for me, Isak's a lock-in in your team. You need to be transferring him in, or if you're on a wildcard, you need to be bringing in Isak, in my personal opinion. Now, Nick Pope is an interesting one. Obviously, you want to be going for Isak in your team. You might want to be going for Dan Burn, or you might want to be going for Anthony Gordon, and then your third asset could potentially be Nick Pope in goal. As I say, the thing is with Nick Pope, he's not 100% nailed on. Dubravka came in when he was injured, did very well, and Nick Pope's come back in and he's claimed his spot, but you just think a couple of mistakes and he might be out of the team. But you'd say 95% Nick Pope should be absolutely fine in goal. And as I say, he's playing for a Newcastle defence that's been okay over the course of the season. Not great, but they have got that double game week and they have got that Leicester fixture before. So if you wanted to go for a goalkeeper, you could also go for Nick Pope as well. But I would prefer Dan Burn personally. Now, I want to talk about some of the teams that are pretty nailed on to get that double game week in 33. Now, the most likely double in the FA Cup from the FA Cup games is Manchester City or Aston Villa. So we'll start off by discussing about Manchester City. Now, they do play Leicester in game week 30. They probably have the fixture of the week, Leicester at home. The way Leicester are playing at the moment is nothing short of absolutely terrible. So realistically, Man City options should be good this week. And as I say, they have got that double in game week 33 that should be coming their way. Not guaranteed, I'd say 95% though. That double should be coming for Manchester City. So you're looking at it there. We're not blessed with Man City options in terms of FPL options just because of Pep Roulette. And just generally, the Man City options just haven't performed as well as we expected to this season. Now, Gvardiol for me is quite clearly the best defensive option. I'm not even a big fan of the Man City defence. You know, they concede a goal every game. It feels like they always seem to find a way to concede. Gvardiol obviously has that attacking potential going forward. He's done very well over the course of the last 12 months now, especially, where he has scored a lot of goals. And going forward, he has looked dangerous. Now, he kind of swaps about positionally. Sometimes he's at left back, sometimes he's at centre back. Kind of depends on the game. So if Gvardiol's going to play in a kind of a fullback position where he's so advanced like he was at times at the start of the season and last season, then he's a great option. But for me, he just concedes too many goals. But if Guardiola, you want to go for him, I still think he's a decent option. But for me, not at the top of the options going forward, in my personal opinion. But, as I say, good fixtures. The double game week in 33. I can't really argue with it. Now, up front, for me, I would be having on a wildcard team either Erling Haaland or marmoush. You could go for both if you really want to, if you really want to go heavy on that Man City attack. But I just think only one of them's fine. And marmoush is obviously 7 or 8 million cheaper than Erling Haaland. I think it's 7 million cheaper than Haaland. So, obviously, you're saving a lot of money. It depends on your team situation. But Erling Haaland is probably clear of marmoush, let's be real. But, as I say, for £7 million, there's definitely a discussion for which one you think would be the best. So, as I say, it depends on the team and the kind of way that you're wanting to plan it. And I still think marmoush is good at 7 million. And I think Erling Haaland could potentially be good just for that kind of window of the fixture that I've got on screen, where he's got Leicester, Man United, Crystal Palace, and a potential double game week with Everton and Villa. He's a good option, in my opinion. With that double game week 33 as well, you know, he would probably be the number one captain option if Man City have that double game week. So going without Haaland could be quite risky, but as I say, if you want to save the money and go for marmoush, it's absolutely valid. But for me, I'd probably be putting Haaland in my wildcard team. And one team that I want to discuss is Aston Villa. Nobody's talking about them, and I don't really understand why. Because if you look at the fixtures, they're actually not that bad. I was thinking no one's talking about Aston Villa assets just due to the fact that they haven't got a good run of fixtures, but they actually have a alright enough run of fixtures. Now, they play Southampton in game week 32, which is the one that I'm looking at and thinking, that's an opportunity for some points, and it's an opportunity for a big differential. Now, as I said before, Aston Villa look likely to beat Preston. If not, if Man City beat Bournemouth, Aston Villa will end up doubling in game week 33. So you're looking at it there. You've got Brighton in game week 30, Nottingham Forest in game week 31. It's not, those are two tricky fixtures, you'd have to say. But then game week 32, you've got Southampton away, unbelievable fixture, one of the best fixtures you can get in game week 32. Literally, Southampton are terrible. And then you've got a game week 33 double game week of Newcastle and Man City. Now, it's not a great double game week, don't get me wrong, but at the end of the day, it's a double game week. There's not going to be a huge amount of teams to choose from in the double game week. We're obviously going to get a few, but Aston Villa assets could definitely be good in that window of game week 32 to game week 33. You're looking at it there, you've got Asensio, I've put on screen, has been unbelievable since signing, scored a lot of goals in all the competitions for Aston Villa so far. There's also Rashford as well, but I just think Asensio's looked unbelievable, so I'd say Asensio's clear of Rashford. You've also got Morgan Rogers. Now, his minutes aren't as nailed as what they were before, because obviously you look at Villa's signings in January, signing Rashford, signing Asensio. It is going to affect Morgan Rogers' minutes slightly. He's still pretty nailed on to start. It's just that early substitution is now a little bit more likely with these attacking options coming in, but still great value. I've had Rogers in all season in my personal team, and he's done very well for me. He has been frustrating at times, of course, dropping 2-pointers when you see him in the Champions League bagging hat-tricks and getting contributions left, right and centre. It feels like it has been frustrating, but if you look at it for the value that Rogers has provided over the course of the whole season, he's actually been very impressive. Now, Ollie Watkins has got a slight knock at the minute, I believe, but beyond that, from game week 32, could be a great option. As I say, that Southampton game week 32 fixture is unbelievable. With a double after that, but looks likely. Ollie Watkins could be a big differential in that front line, but it's just tricky when you've got Mateta as a good option, you've got Erling Haaland or marmoush you want to have, you've obviously got Isak from before that. So it's a tricky one, but Ollie Watkins could be a big differential and could do very well in that time period. But as I say, a lot depends on these FA Cup results, because I don't want to talk about teams like Brighton, Nottingham Forest, Fulham, these players and teams that could double in the future just because we don't know yet. So I don't want to be talking about, because I feel like it'd be kind of a waste of time, because, you know, I could be talking about Nottingham Forest assets and then they could go and lose. So it's just about being patient, waiting for them games. But I wanted to speak about the Man City and the Aston Villa assets, just due to the fact that they have a very likely chance of doubling in game week 33 due to the fact that they're playing each other in blank game week 34 currently. And then I want to discuss the double game week between Crystal Palace as well and Newcastle, because of course they do double in game week 32. So if this video was helpful, do drop a like down below. Please do subscribe to the channel. If you watched this point, you may as well hit subscribe. It would be very greatly appreciated. It takes 1 second. Thank you very much for watching. Drop a like if you enjoyed. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.